Okay. Welcome. Nice to see you, Laura. So we're going to start seated as we usually do, just getting ourselves prepared to be practicing in a more present state of mind. So just find your way to sitting upright, using as little support of the back of the chair as you can, and finding your sitting bones right beneath you and putting your shoulders above your hips. And then making any adjustment to your pelvic tilt. Some of us sit a little bit with the pelvis tilted forward, others tilted back. So you kind of have to find your own kind of sweet spot with the pelvis. So you might rock the pelvis forward and back until you feel spacious on the front body, spacious on the back body. And then take a moment to press down into the chair and just encourage your shoulder blades to gently move toward your chest. Sometimes when we open the chest, it causes our belly to push forward. It causes our low back to shorten. So make sure that isn't the case. Try to have your chest lifted and spread without shortening your lower back, without poofing the belly forward. And then see if you can keep your shoulders back and just place your hands on your legs somewhere. Close your eyes, adjust your skull so that you sense the skull is supported by how it's placed above the spine. Your chin is level with the floor. Feel your feet connecting with the floor. And just take note or bring your awareness to the lower half of the body, starting with where you're meeting the chair, thinking about the legs, the feet, and just giving this part of the body its purpose, which is really your foundation, kind of the rooting aspect of your seated position. So see if you can imagine roots coming out of your feet into the floor. See if you can sense the density or the weight of your leg bones. Also imagine your sitting bones rooting down through the chair and continuing on. And once we get that sensation of feeling connected with the floor, then we might find a matching sense of lightness in the torso. So now holding that sense of foundation, can you find a way to lift your torso a little bit more? Imagine lifting the pelvis slightly higher from the chair. Imagine lifting the whole rib cage up slightly higher, lifting the skull. And make sure the shoulders aren't included in that lifting. Your shoulders should stay heavy. And see if you can just hold for a few moments these two aspects, which are very polarized. We have the grounded aspect and the light aspect. And just kind of sensing that you can do both at once. And then joining the hands in front of your heart, we'll inhale here. On an exhale, keeping the chest lifted, tilt your chin toward your chest, bowing toward your heart, your own inner teacher. Lifting your head, releasing your hands, and opening your eyes. So welcome back to Gentle Yoga. Nice to see you all. We're going to start warming up with the strap. So make sure you have a strap. If you don't have a strap, you can always get by with something else that's kind of a fabric material, like a bathrobe tie is a good one. And just have that in your hand. So we can go through the 6 actions of the spine with the strap. And we're going to begin with flexion and extension. So that's back bending, forward bending. So remember, if you need to modify your arms, you can always bend the elbows. Otherwise, we're going to a fully extended arm, and the hands are wider than the shoulders. So if you drop your strap down, it should start right above the crown of the head. That's like kind of your neutral center point. So you might just kind of sense where it is, where you're beginning. And on an in-breath, you're going to arch your back, take the pelvis, tilt the pelvis back, If you think about that pelvis like a bowl, you're tipping it toward yourself. And then push the strap forward, exhale, round your back, tilt the pelvis forward. So when we do forward bending and back bending, the pelvic tilt is very important. So as we back bend, your pelvis should be tilting back like you're drinking out of a mug, that kind of tipping direction. And as you push forward and round your back, your pelvis tips forward. So you might do a few of these just thinking about the pelvic tilt and how that helps us move into back bending and forward bending with more of a neutral experience. So what we don't want to feel in a back bend is a pinching in the lower back. So that posterior pelvic tilt will help you. A forward tilt of the pelvis when we forward bend is going to help you go deeper into that forward bend. Let's do 3 more here, 3 more complete cat-cow. That's what we call the back bend forward bending action in yoga, is cat-cow, when we move like this. The cow is the arching back and the cat is the rounded spine. Okay, last one. And wherever you are with it, just taking your strap right back up above the head. Go ahead and release the strap down to your legs. Give your arms a rest. Maybe roll your shoulders a few times, because we're going to have the arms up quite a bit here, so I just want you to refresh yourself. So now we're going to use the strap to move the spine laterally, so that's the crescent moon shape. So you can take your strap again, same setup. You want to make sure you're right above the crown. The crown is the highest ridge of the top of the head. Inhale up through the hands. Exhale, you're going to tilt your strap down with the left and up with the right. And then notice how the right sitting bone just maybe got a little lighter, so bring some attention back to putting weight there. Remember, you need those roots to feel any amount of spaciousness. And then think about your hands moving back so that you're keeping your, back in space behind you, not coming out of it. Take a few more breaths. I know you're probably ready though. Okay, and then inhale, come back to center, and let's just drop the strap down for a moment. Do some shoulder rolls. Good. Let's try it again. This time we'll take the strap in the other direction. So go ahead and raise the arms up. Inhale, extend your arms fully. Exhale, tipping the strap down with the right, up with the left, putting some weight back in your left sitting bone. So if you can see your left arm, that's a clue to move both hands back behind you so that you can kind of keep your chest more open. Deep breaths. Nice. Inhale, you're going to come back to center. Exhale, lower the strap. And again, this time let's release the chin down and roll the head softly from side to side. When you're ready, you can bring your head to center, lift your head. We're going to do twisting now with the strap. Same idea. Straps right above the crown of the head. Arms are extended as fully as you can. Inhale, big here. Exhale, you're going to turn to the right. And you're going to hold for 5 breaths. And every exhale is a chance to go a little deeper. You can resist the hands apart, pulling them apart without actually letting them move on that strap. Every time you inhale, try to lift a little taller through the top of the head. And every time you exhale, wringing the spine out gently, deepening your twist. Finish up an exhalation. Inhale, back to center. Exhale, lower the arms. Go back to dropping the chin down and gently rolling the head from side to side. Good. And now go ahead and lift your head. We'll take the other side of the twist, bringing the arms up. Take a full breath in. Exhale, turning left. There will be a stopping point in your body. Honor that and let that be your starting point. So the next 5 breaths, Just a slight encouragement of the spine to twist a little bit more deeply, a slight coaxing with every exhale. Inhale for length, 2 more breaths out. And then inhale, center, and exhale, release your strap. Okay, so we will use the strap later, but we don't need it for a while, so you can just set it aside. We're going to keep going with a little bit of neck and shoulder action, a little bit of some release there. So just clasp your hands and place your hands behind your head. And then wrap your elbows around your head. Squeeze your head with your elbows. On an exhale, just drop your chin to your chest. Let your back round. And the idea here is to just give a little bit of an extension or a lengthening to the back of the neck. So it's not so much about the rest of the spine. We just did that. I want you to really tap into the neck. So the chin and chest coming together. Deep breaths. Keeping the elbows squeezing in. And then as you're ready, inhale, let your elbows open up. You want to look up, and I really want you to push your head into your hands. This helps your neck strengthen, and it gives your neck so much support. So really push your head into your hands and try to take the tips of the elbows back. Think about your shoulder blades gently pushing toward the chest. And think about what your pelvis should be doing here. Since we're in a slight back bend, if your pelvis was full of liquid, we want to tip the pelvis back. Good. And now go ahead and find your neutral upright position. You can release your hands down. We're going to extend the right arm toward the floor, 45 degrees. Your palm facing forward. Arm is as straight as can be. Tilt the head away from the right arm. So tilt the head to the left. Take your left hand and find the upper ridge of your right ear. And just pull on that ear like a little handle, which hopefully the effect should be a little bit of an increased stretch in the right side neck. Now you can work with your arm like a rudder. You can either kind of gently float it forward and back in space. You can also play with the rotation of the arm. You kind of have to explore for yourself. We all have different little hot spots. So you might find that you have a little more sensation doing one thing rather than the other. And just make sure when you do have sensation that you are breathing. Because sometimes sensation will have us stop breathing if it's overwhelming. So make sure it's not overwhelming, and also make sure that you're breathing. Go ahead and release gently the ear. You can bring the head back to center. We're going to extend the left arm energetically, so not just dangling there, but reach out through the fingertips, like each fingertip has a little sprinkler on it. And then tilting your head to the right, taking the arm overhead. You might not need that piece of grabbing the ear. You can feel free to leave your hand down if you don't need as much support. And then maybe play with moving the arm forward and back, maybe playing with the rotation of the arm until you start to feel a little bit of sensation, maybe some tension that we're able to access and breathe into and release. You can imagine the tension rolling off the shoulder and out through those little sprinkler fingertips. And go ahead and help yourself out of it. You can bring your hand back to your leg, releasing your head from your hand. And we're going to do one more thing seated here, which is helping our shoulders, our chest, and our inner thighs. So you're going to step wide. Make sure you have enough of your butt purchase on the chair, that you're not going to do a somersault off the chair. Your feet are wide. Your toes can be 45 degrees. We're going to kind of grab our thighs right by the knees. You're going to start by just kind of locking out your right arm, taking the right shoulder toward the middle space here, bringing the shoulder low. So this is dual purpose. We want to feel a little shoulder dip here. You're going to feel rotation of the transverse abdominals, you'll feel a little rotation of your torso. And you're also hopefully getting an inner thigh release on the right. So those are kind of the primary objectives here. The other side, this left side, is kind of just passive, doing whatever it needs to do to help you get this right side going. You might also be able to tap into your right lower back. Okay, don't be afraid to drop that shoulder in nice and low and give it some breath. Whatever you're feeling, maybe it's your back, your inner thigh, maybe it's your chest, maybe something else, give it some breath. And then on an inhale, use your stomach muscles to support your spine with your stomach muscles kind of corseting around. Come out of it. And now second side. Bringing left shoulder in toward the middle space. You might relax the whole right forearm on your thigh if that feels more comfortable. Again, it's not so much about the right side now. Hopefully getting an extension to the inner groin area of that left side, inner thigh, the shoulder, the chest, the low back, whatever it is that's feeling it, give it some breath. Deep breaths. Beautiful. And then inhale, come out of it. Okay, so we're going to do a segment of class now standing, and then we'll come back to seated. So you can come up to standing. Feel free to have the chair support you for mountain pose. If you like, you could turn it around and have the higher part of the chair right behind you. Sometimes it's a helpful prop because it helps you take the hands a little farther back. You have the reference of touch through the fingertips. Otherwise, you can use the centers of your outer thighs kind of as a marker for where we want the thumbs to be, which obviously the thumbs are under the shoulders, so your shoulders should also be in line with your hips. So for most of us, we have to roll the shoulders back. Imagine your shoulder blades moving into your back pockets. Maybe you don't have back pockets, so we use imagination a lot in yoga. Take your thighs back and take your buttocks forward, and just start finding a firmness in your body. You should think about your leg muscles hugging onto the bones. Your thigh muscles are squeezing to the point where if you were to grab your kneecap, it wouldn't be able to wiggle around. It's kind of framed and stabilized by all the muscles surrounding it. Your feet shouldn't be clinging because that's a way to make the feet smaller. We want to have all the surface area that we can, so keep your feet relaxed. And the easiest way to bring relaxation to the feet is to balance them. So if you can start to spread your weight around evenly, you will start to feel a little bit more at ease in your feet. You won't feel like you have to cling to the floor like suction cup feet. You can relax your feet. And the good news is when you relax the feet, the whole body above the feet kind of carries the same attitude of relaxing, softening, finding more space. And when the feet are soft, we can respond more intelligently to all those little movements that keep flowing through us. Think about your feet having a deep connection with the floor. Maybe imagine a mirror image of yourself underneath the feet. And just like when we were sitting, once you explore that kind of depth, that really rooted foundation of this pose, maybe you can encourage the pelvis, rib cage, skull to become a little lighter, a little more lifted, a little more spacious. Keep the shoulders dropping. And just holding the pose and sensing the breath and how it shows up in the pose. Wonderful. So I always think about, you can open your eyes, I always think about mountain pose, kind of like our standing centering before we get going into more active asanas. Asana is the word for pose. So we're going to do our chair downward dog just to get nice and long in the back. I did like 8 hours of yard work yesterday, so my back is really angry at me today. So we want to do a lot of intelligent stretching. I don't know if anybody else was out in their yard yesterday, but just always honoring how you're showing up, not making demands on yourself. But just being where you are, it's the only way we can do this practice. So we want to walk ourselves back as far as we can, keeping the legs vertical. You might need to bend your knees. It depends how tight your back and or legs are. And then try to straighten the arms as best you can. Relax the head through the space of the arms. And you might just do a very micro movement of wagging the hips. So the way you can think about it is if your butt was against a wall, you'd be gently moving your hips so that the buttocks kind of take turns touching the wall. And this helps you open up the sacrum, the lower back. It helps you kind of individually target the legs. And after doing that, just pausing in the middle and drawing both hips back evenly. Because of gravity, we do tend to fall or collapse into the front body here. So take your ribs, inner front ribs, zip them toward each other and pull the inner front ribs gently toward the back body. So you're creating a little support network for your back body. This is a forward bend, so you should be tipping your pelvis forward, which means your sitting bones are curling up to the ceiling. If the pelvis is full of liquid in this one, it's filling out the front rim of the pelvis. Good. Now go ahead and start to move your weight forward. We're going to do a series of poses facing this chair. And so we're going to start with the chair at the top of the mat, meaning you have a lot of length of mat running behind you. And we're going to start with the right foot under the chair and the left foot stepping back. So just look at your feet and make sure that they're not on the same line. Your right foot should be closer to your right chair leg and the left foot should be more in line with the left chair leg. Your left toes are slightly turned out. So you think of, if you've seen pictures of like Egyptian people, they have those toes that are all pointing forward. We don't want that. So a slight turn out with your left toes is going to be a little bit better for the body. We have a feature on the femur bone called the greater trochanter that we have to allow space for. So even though those kind of perfect lines are pretty, we have to accommodate for our anatomy. So first thing we want to do is have the legs straight. And again, you might have to honor some bend in your knees because of tightness. So straightest leg that you can might mean still bent. Same idea that the kneecaps don't wobble around, so you're squeezing the muscles of the legs to the bones. And then I also want you to imagine your hips are really hugging together like there's a big ACE bandage around them. So you're compacting the hips. This is very stabilizing. Your arms, I want you to have your wrists in line with your shoulders. So that might mean you have to bring the chair a little closer to you. And this is the first stage of the intense side stretching pose. It's called Parsvottanasana in the Sanskrit language that yoga is based on. So this is stage one, where we're kind of in a soft forward bend. Stage two, and you may not feel like doing stage two today, so just honor yourself, but would be to just come in a little lower. So maybe onto the forearms, maybe just bending the elbows. So come into your deepest, whatever that is for you. We do tend to kind of drop the right hip and float the left hip here. So I want you to find a way to rebalance your hips. Elevate the right, drop the left. Imagine there's a little teacup on your lower back and it's not going to roll off and tumble down to the floor on the right side. Your head should just be passive. Let your head go. Nothing to see here.
And again, think about how your pelvis is tilting. Take the front rim of the pelvis toward the floor even more, the back rim of the pelvis toward your head. Other way, Charlotte, I think you did the opposite. We're going to transition into triangle pose, which is very easy to do from here. So come back to your hands. Pivot your left foot toes out even more, so they're more looking at the edge of the mat than they were the top of the mat. Place your right hand in line with your right shoulder if it isn't. And you're going to slowly turn with your chest to look to the left. Take your left hand onto your left hip. Attempt to roll your right buttock toward the left edge of the mat. Try to roll the left hip toward the right edge of the mat. Attempt to stack your shoulders one above the other. And if you can, try to look to the side wall rather than the floor. You may or may not include the elevated top stacking arm. I consider the cherry on top. So we don't put a roof on a building if the building's not built yet. So don't stack the arm if you feel kind of wobbly or unstable or like things aren't ready for that. And gently, you're going to make your way back to left hand coming down. And you're going to turn those left toes back in slightly. Not as wide, not as turned out. And now we're going to transition to the revolving version of triangle. So put your hips back into that squeezing together compact placement. Stay down on your left hand. Take your right hand to your right hip. And pushing into your 2 feet and your one hand, start to revolve your chest to face the right. Your right hip is going to want to push out. I want you to keep pulling the right hip toward the midline of the body. That's the hip compaction. And let your chest really seek the sunlight on the right side here, especially around the left armpit. Let that come out of the shadows. I've been studying ways to lose belly fat because I struggle with that. And rotations and deep twists are really key to help you kind of keep the belly down. So becoming very interested in deeper rotations. So gently start to turn back to the chair. And I want you to revisit your deepest pose, the first one we did. Maybe you're bending the elbows, maybe you're on the forearms. I want your head to be fully surrendered and heavy, just dangling there. Your legs are still straight. You're leveling off the lower back. Your hips are squeezing together. And just let the next 5 breaths come through as easily as you can. There's kind of, in every pose, there's everybody's individual sweet spot. We don't want to be complacent or underwhelmed, and we don't want to be irritated or overwhelmed. So we have to find that kind of magic little space where we're neither, where we're kind of occupied in a good way. And this is where the mind is happy to stay present. So another clue that you're in a good place for yourself is that you're actually thinking in real time. You're not dipping into the past or the future. Now we're going to slowly come out. Come back to your hands. Help your feet together and come back into your chair dog. So you're just going to walk yourself back. Your feet should be as wide as your hips. Maybe you'll do that little kind of wagging action of rolling the buttocks back one at a time. Maybe you'll just hold it kind of still. Begin to move into the second side of that very same sequence. Now the left foot is going to be under the chair, closer to the left chair leg. The right foot will step back, slight turn out with the toes. And your left foot should be more, your right foot should be more in line with your right chair leg. This hopefully allows enough width for the hips, which will help us level the hips. So just be on your tall arms. Try to compact your hips. We tend to swivel the left hip forward here. So you're going to roll the outer left hip back, which carries the outer right hip forward. Find your straight, firm legs. Imagine the sides of your torso are equal. In other words, you don't look like a banana. So keep the sides of the trunk long and even, which has a lot to do with the hips being even. Once you feel all of that, tip the pelvis forward, go into your first deeper forward bend. And let your head just kind of settle, release. I want everybody to notice something here. In this pose, we have asymmetrical legs, of course. In yoga, we always try to restore balance to everything we do. So everybody's probably noticing a heavy left pinky toe, a heavy right big toe. So in other words, weight tends to travel to the forward leg side, to the left side. So to equalize that, I want you to bring additional weight to your left big toe and right small toe. It's a subtle change. Sometimes these subtle changes can make a world of difference. They also give the mind something to do. The mind that likes to wander. Okay, so now we're going to try to come back to triangle pose with the hands coming onto the chair again, lining up your left wrist under your left shoulder, turning your right toes out slightly wider, allowing us to turn out to the broad side of the mat, and then taking your right hand onto your right hip. Start to roll your left buttock toward the right edge of the mat. Roll your right hip back. Attempt to put the shoulders one above the other. Let the crown of your head represent the beautiful direction of your spine. So in other words, don't let your crown dangle. The crown is the exit point for that line of energy that starts at the tailbone, shoots all the way out through the top of your head. So connect the dots. Keep rolling that left armpit chest around toward the right. Feel your triangle. Maybe you add the top arm, maybe you don't. You'll know if it's a good choice. If you get it up there and it feels like dead weight, it's not in alignment, it's not good, it's not functional, bring it back down. If it feels like it's energizing your pose and giving you superpowers, then use the top arm. You'll know when you make these choices from the ego or from the instinct. Good. And now gently turning back toward the chair. Turn those right toes slightly back in. Squeeze your hips back together. Adjust that right outer hip forward, left outer hip back so you're level. Now we'll keep the right arm under us. We're going to pick up the left hand, take it to the waist or the hip, pushing into your little tripod. You have 2 feet, you have 1 arm. Push down through all 3 points. And then start to turn your chest to the left. Notice how we tend to push out that left hip bone. I want you to suck that left hip bone toward the right hip bone. And then connect the dots of your tailbone out through the crown of the head. So you have one beautiful, energetic line of energy along the central axis, the central energy channel, the spine. Deep, deep twist. 2 more exhales. This is revolving triangle pose. And on an exhale, you're gonna turn toward your chair and I want you to revisit that first pose. So you're gonna come back to your deepest version. The pelvis tilts forward. The head hangs freely. The legs are straight and firm. Try not to squeeze the toes or grip the feet. Remember, we don't want those little suction cups. We want soft, I call them big fat lion paw feet. Big fat feet. This pose, you want to steer your torso toward the forward leg. You might notice your torso veering right. Keep veering your torso left. Breastbone lines up with left leg. And again, that transfer of weight across the toes. Left big toe, right small toe to compensate. Now start to inhale and lift your head, place your hands. We're going to help our feet come together. And now the chair seat will be towards the wide edge of the mat in front of us. We're going to do a wide standing forward bend. So your feet are going to open up as wide as they go. Some of us it's limited, but just do your best to be wide. Your toes should be in front of your heels. We don't want to bulldoze the pinky toe, which can happen. So just take a moment to lift and spread your feet from big toe to small toe. And then you're going to start to come into your deepest, whatever that is. Maybe it's bent elbows, maybe it's straight arms, maybe it's forearms. And make sure your feet are balanced. So if you're all heavy in the heels, that's too much weight back. If you're clinging on your toes, that's too much weight forward. So be really centered up on the feet. We also don't want to be overly heavy on the outer feet. Bringing weight to the inner heels and the big toe ball mounds. Your knees will try to turn and look at each other. So as you're holding this pose, I want you to think about moving the flesh of your thighs from the inner thighs toward the outer thighs, which will help you align the knees to look at the toes rather than each other. Again, don't let gravity collapse your back into your front. So scoop your front gently toward your back, creating a little safety net of support for the back body. You can think about zipping your inner front ribs together and hugging them toward the back body. And your legs are straight as they are, and eventually it'll be even straighter. Just 5 more breaths here. And when you come to the end of the next exhalation, you can start to bring your hands onto the chair, start to move the feet closer together, and then help yourself stand and put yourself back in mountain pose. So it's fun to revisit mountain pose over the course of one practice because it does change for most of us. It becomes a bit more stable. So feet can be hip distance if you need that spacing, shoulders in line with hips, your hips in line with your heels. Give a little emphasis to weighting the heels a bit more here, which can help influence the lower back to settle in a good way. Keep your gaze pointed down toward your cheeks with your eyes closed. Keep the shoulders heavy, the legs firm.
and a neutral pelvis. So we're not dipping the front rim down, we're not dipping the back rim down, it's level. Beautiful. Okay. So we're gonna open the eyes. We're gonna do one more thing here. Putting the chair, the higher part in front of us for support. Taking the right foot forward, left foot back. And what you're gonna try to do is create enough space that you're able to bend and straighten your right leg. So what we're targeting, there's a lot of, you can do any pose and make it about a certain thing. So today I really want you to bring awareness to your left front thigh. This is the hip flexor. The hip flexor gets so much more flexion than it does extension. So what we're trying to do is encourage a little extension. Because this is considered a back bending move, which way does the pelvis tilt? Show me with your hands. This way or this way? Yeah, Linda, good. You guys aced it, good. So think about that pelvis tilting back, the front rim lifting, the lower rim, the back rim lowering. And just do little pulses, little bend and straighten. It doesn't have to be exaggerated, just little tiny movement. I also want you to attempt to keep your head straight up and down, your torso straight up and down. So sometimes people escape the hip flexion extension by, I'm trying to simulate it, by waving their torso around. The body's really clever at getting out of stuff. Keep your torso stabilized. And each time you sink that knee, that hip flexor is going to get a nice extension. We are all tight in our hip flexors, and this causes a bevy of issues, including low back stuff. Good, back heel can be up, it can be down, it's not really, doesn't matter for what we're doing today. Okay, so you're probably getting tired. Help yourself, switch your feet out any old way that you can so you're safe. Switch your feet out. Left foot forward, right foot back. I have my heel lifted just because I find it easier to kind of bend and straighten that way, but feel free to plant the heel if that's easier for you. And this is just a micro movement. We're not doing a huge, deep knee bend. We're just kind of entering and leaving some, we're entering and leaving sensation. We're doing re-entry method, which sometimes the body responds to better than just a static, deep hold. So just little diving in, diving out. And go into that deeper knee bend when you're exhaling. Straighten the leg a little when you're inhaling. And think about keeping a book on your head, the torso upright, the pelvic tilt really continuing. It has to become stronger when you bend the knee. Just 3 more. Meanwhile, we're strengthening the front leg quadriceps, which is a very good, healthy thing to do for knee health. And go ahead and find your way to helping the feet together. And now we're going to come back to chair sitting. Good work, everyone. Okay, so we're going to do a little core strengthening. You can use your hands on your chair for some support. And I want you to just put yourself in that starting position that we do at the beginning of class, but with your heel lifted. So your legs, your shins should be vertical. They're right under your knees. So sitting up tall, let that be your goal, to keep the spine really erect as it is now. And you're going to do little tiptoes, lifting the feet individually from the floor. So some things that happen when we work with abs is we do horrible things to our backs. So I'm trying to kind of have you experience keeping the integrity of your posture as you work the core. So it's little tiptoes. You might start to be able to elevate the leg higher, but again, your primary focus is to keep your shoulders in line with your hips, You're on your sitting bones. It does help to corset the abdominal muscles if you can kind of tap into that awareness of, sometimes I think a particle board, all the muscles kind of moving this way and that to really form a strengthened surface. The next time you lift your legs, hold it there. See about extending it. It might not go all the way, probably won't. And we're totally doing a deep hip flexion right now, so we'll relieve it in a moment. Good, go ahead and bend the knee again. Step that foot down, you can let both heels come down. Whatever leg you just lifted, you're gonna turn to the opposite side like 45 degrees so that that leg can step back so that that knee can point down. Whatever leg that is that's back, take that hand to your hip. Tip your pelvis back, which helps you open that hip flexor. So the pelvis is, the tailbone is moving in, the pelvis is tipping back. And just see if you can take that knee toward the floor. Not to the floor, toward the floor. It might be touching the floor, but the idea is just to direct the energy line down. So this is going to help you open that hip flexor also. Breathe into it. And then softly release and get out of there. Good. So back to our marching, little tiptoes. So find your sitting bones. You can hold the chair. I like to hold the chair a little bit behind my shoulders, so my shoulders are really going to stay back. My heels are lifted, and I'm going to go back to those little tiptoe marches. My core is lifting my leg, not my lower back. So snuggle your front belly into your back body, the underside of an umbrella. So we've all seen people that do lots of core work and they might have a six-pack, but sometimes those people look like the fishing pole that the line is pulled too tight because they've over-shortened the front body and the back body got longer, so it's distorted. So what we're doing right now is we're strengthening the core, but without that distortion. We don't want that. So next time you have that other leg up, you can leave it there. The other heel can rest, it's off duty. Start to extend the lifted leg as much as you can. Hold it there using your stomach, not your back. Keep your eyes relaxed. Breathe. Good. And then bend the knee, step down, and now you're going to swivel away from the side of the leg you just lifted so that you can take that foot back, so that you can direct the knee down. You might need to use your chair for support. And we all have different size chairs. I was going to mention this. The ideal kind of height of your chair when you're sitting is that your knee is in line with your hip. Your knee is not above your hip or way below your hip line. So in other words, your thigh bone should be pretty level. So just know that over time, if you want to start to identify a better chair, if you're not loving the one you're using, kind of looking for that knee in alignment with hip seat. Okay. Now go ahead and help yourself come back to seated. Okay, can everybody lift their right leg from the floor from under the thigh? Good. Just drop the lower leg. We're not going to work with the lower leg today, so just let it dangle there. If you lift the right leg from the floor under the thigh, then put your shoulders back because the shoulders might have rounded, the chest might have collapsed. So make sure you're on top of your sitting bones, your shoulders are back, your chest is lifted and spread. So this is, we're going to call this our hand to big toe pose number 1. The full pose, the leg is extended, and we're not doing that today, but we're going to go through all 3. So now you're going to take your right hand to your right shin, left hand to your waist, and you're going to take that right leg out to the side as much as you can. Because we want to keep some direction of energy, I want you to pull your right toes up and yes, and flex the foot. So I kind of feel like a little court jester sometimes doing this. Now just to make it even more feeling like little court jester, look over your left shoulder. Good. Now move your head back to center, move your knee back to center, and switch to your left hand holding your right shin. Keep that foot elevated, like you're taking your foot off the gas. Take your right hand to your right hip. Good. And now help yourself turn your torso deeply to the right. Good. Come back to center. Scoop underneath the thigh with both hands. Bring the thigh and chest close together, being on top of the sitting bones. Now extend the leg as much as you can. And now see about less help from your hands. Your hands are probably going to stay there, but just less help. Use your stomach muscles instead. Beautiful. And now go ahead and step down. Maybe you need to shake it out or bounce it out. We'll do the same thing to the other side. So we're going to scoop underneath left thigh. You can just drop that left lower leg. It can be passive, but lift the toes up away from the floor. So you're giving some purpose. You're just not activating as much. Chest and thigh comes together. Shoulders are back. Now left hand's going to take hold of the shin. Right hand's going to take hold of the hip. And we're going to gently start to guide the left leg to the side. Good. Now look over your right shoulder just to add that piece. The head will move back now. The knee will come back in. Transfer right hand to left shin now. Left hand to the hip or the waist. Sit up tall if you lost that. And then gently start to turn, looking off to the left. Twisting, twisting, twisting. And inhale, come back around. You can slide both hands under your thigh. Extend your leg. And try to have your core hold that leg rather than your lower back, rather than your hip flexor. And then softly bring the foot down. So we did a lot of contraction to the abdomen. So like I was saying before, we don't want to leave ourselves kind of shortened. So we're going to elongate the front body. So I'm going to have you lean back on your chair. Put your legs out in front of you. If it's comfortable, you can bring your arms overhead. And lengthen the stomach muscles. Take a few deep breaths also to encourage the elongation, the extension. You might be able to rest your head on your arms. And now you're going to help yourself come up. We're going to do one more pose, which is it's a standing balancing pose. We're going to do seated. So can everybody cross their legs, left over right? And if you can't, you can kind of get by with crossing your ankles or just kind of hugging your shins together. So if you're not able to get your thigh on top of your other thigh, you can kind of do a modified shin crossing shin. Okay, but we are going to do the left leg crossing the right leg. So whatever you're doing, just try to have the same setup. So with the eagle arms now, your arms are going to be in front of you, elbows right in front of the shoulders, shoulder width. And because we have the left leg on top, we want the right arm underneath. So the right elbow comes underneath the left elbow. For some of us, we're just going to take hold of our shoulders. For others, you're going to let your right fingers find your left palm. So squeeze your legs together. Yep. Squeezing as if there's a nickel between your thighs. And try to open the upper back with every inhale. Spread that kind of lateral space across your upper back between your shoulder blades, even under your shoulder blades. Spread it wider. Because of our arms, there's a tendency here for the head to pull forward. Don't let that happen. So keep your head right over your spine. It might help to close your eyes because our eyes do tend to drag us around, pull us forward. So you might benefit by closing your eyes. This is everything hugging toward midline. On an in-breath, we're going to unwrap the arms, unwrap the legs, rest on your heels. Feet are wide. Take your arms out sideways. It's a seated 5-pointed star. Softly close your eyes and just let all of that energy you just pulled into the mid line of the body flow back out in 5 directions. Fingertips, feet, crown of your head. Nice. Relaxing your arms, stepping your feet together. We're going to do the other side of the eagle pose. So again, modified, you could cross ankles, squeeze the legs together that way, or you can cross your legs. So I saw some people with the lower legs kind of flying apart, which is what happens. We're really trying to squeeze it in. So we're kind of hugging everything to midline. Okay, then the arms come in. This time, left elbow is going to be under right. And either you're going to go for shoulders and lift elbows that way, or you're going to have left fingers find right palm. And then squeezing everything to midline, like you're creating a diamond. That amount of pressure and squeezing inward. Soften your face though. Keep your head over your spine. Soften your jaw. We have to know where to bring the effort and where to not bring the effort. Opening the upper back. And then on an inhale, unwrap your arms, unwrap your legs, rest on your heels again. Extend the arms sideways, palms facing down, closing your eyes. There's a peaceful nature that comes when we find balance. We bring things inward, we send them back out. Equalizing is kind of a peaceful experience. So lowering your arms and your feet together. You're going to use the back of your chair now. We're going to do seated final resting pose. If you prefer, you can always lie down. And just make sure the feet are directly under the knees, the heels directly under the knees. Your hands are on your legs in a way that your shoulders stay back. So if you're grabbing your kneecaps, your shoulders aren't in a good place. So have your hands really close to your torso, somewhere on your legs. Adjust your skull so you sense that when the head is aligned, we don't sense its weight. When it's misaligned, the neck usually takes a toll. So one way to find alignment with your skull is you feel a weightlessness. Release the jaw, close the eyes. And it does take effort to be seated in a chair, but we're really trying to turn the dial down to the lowest amount of effort we can. So let anything go that's no longer needed as far as effort. Let your own breath be your object of awareness. The peaks and the valleys. Softening the skin of your face. Noticing anything you notice. The idea here is to not control the body, the breath, or the brain, but just to witness. And just as important as the witnessing is to allow whatever shows up here, whatever bubbles up to the surface of your awareness, just give it some space, allow it to be there, don't push it away. Yoga helps us develop equanimity and even response to all things. Notice how things rise, abide, and dissolve. We'll gently draw ourselves out of the pose by deeper breathing. Maybe inviting little simple movements, starting with the outermost parts of your body, fingers, toes, maybe your head and your neck. Maybe then bending knees and elbows a little bit more, straightening knees and elbows a little bit more. And then as you're ready, pulling yourself away from the chair, sitting up tall with eyes open. We'll bring our hands together in front of the heart. And just take a moment always just to notice how you feel and to give thanks for whatever you're thankful for. And let's take a deep breath in through the nose and let it go. From the place within me that I know to be divine, I honor that place within each of you. Namaste. All right, thank you all for being here. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.